Polyester, cotton, or acrylic? Which one is the best to crochet an amigurumi? And which difference does it make if we choose to crochet with any of them? Are you new to amigurumi and you're wondering which yarn is the best one for you to start? Don't worry, I've got you covered. Hey everyone, if you're new here in the channel, I am Bianca from Crocheniacs, and if you want to learn how to start to crochet amigurumi from scratch, or if just like me, you love everything amigurumi related, then this is the right channel for you. And today we are talking about the 3 most famous types of yarn to crochet amigurumi: polyester, cotton, and acrylic. And people always ask me, which yarn should they choose? What difference does it make if they choose to crochet an amigurumi with acrylic or polyester? Which one is the best for a project? If the designer chose to work with cotton, is it okay for me if I change to acrylic? So these are the kind of questions that I'm going to answer in today's video. So let's get it started. Something very important to mention in this video before we start talking about the difference between cotton, acrylic, and polyester is that today I'm not focusing on any brand, okay? There are some videos here in the channel where I talk about the difference between brands, how many colors the brands have, and recommended crochet hook sizes, prices, and everything. But in today's video, I'm talking about the fiber itself, not a brand. And I have worked with so many different brands already in my life that I'm now creating a spreadsheet and I'm cataloging all the yarns that I have ever worked from all over the world and which project did I do, writing like the things that I liked, the things that I disliked about the yarn, because there are so many brands that I have already worked that I will probably forget within a few years if I have ever used this yarn or that yarn. So that's why I'm cataloging. There are so many different brands in this world. It's a lot to talk about. So for that reason, it's really important to focus on the yarn type in today's video. So first up, let's talk about cotton yarn, which, as you all know, is my favorite type of yarn for so many reasons. And polyester fiber has become very popular in the past few years, but cotton yarn has been everyone's favorite for amigurumi for many years. It has a very good durability and it gives such a good stitch definition, which I think is one of my favorite characteristics for working with cotton yarn. And especially if you're a beginner, I cannot advocate enough that cotton yarn is the best choice for beginners. Of course, beginners working with a thin yarn like this one, which is a fingering yarn, might be difficult, but there are thicker cotton yarns in the market that will be very good for you, because in the beginning it's hard to like hold the yarn in your hands and keep your crochet tension, things like that. So the thinner the yarn is, more difficult it will be. But even so, cotton yarn will forever be my favorite, especially if I am teaching a beginner, if I am recommending a yarn type for a beginner. Cotton yarn will always be my favorite. I have seen some people saying on YouTube comments and Instagram posts that they don't like working with cotton because the yarn tends to split easily when they're crocheting. They insert the crochet hook and the crochet hook enters like in the middle of the fiber, but it really depends on the brand that you're using. Some brands, the yarn is so well twisted that it doesn't happen. And other brands that are also 100% cotton, it happens quite easily, which is awful for beginners because it makes our job way harder. And what do I mean by that? When I say that the yarn like opens easily, I have a thread here and it basically opens like this. Hope you can see it. This one, it has like 4 threads twisted together, but it's well twisted. But depending on the yarn, it's not so well twisted, I might say. And when you crochet, the hook enters and splits the fiber like this, which is not good at all. And there are 2 other things that I really like about cotton yarn. When you want to see details in your amigurumi, the more detailed it is, the better to work with cotton yarn. And let me show you an example. I crocheted this doll. This is Lori, my unicorn girl, and you can see how detailed this doll is. She's wearing like pastel colors in her overalls. She has colorful hair, and the doll is so detailed. I would never achieve such a good result if I had to work with acrylic or polyester. The doll would be cute, yes, but it will be different. And for detailed amigurumi like this, I go with cotton yarn 100%. And this is one of the reasons also why I recommend cotton yarn for beginners. When we are beginners, we are trying to understand what is a stitch and what is not a stitch, what is a knot, what is a single crochet, what is an increase, what is a half double crochet. And the cotton yarn gives such a good stitch definition that it makes it easier for people to see the stitch as well. While with acrylic or polyester, it might not be that easy. But cotton is not always a bed of roses. There are some drawbacks in working with this yarn because since it has no stretch, cotton yarn has no stretch, it can also make it a bit harder to work, especially when it comes to your crochet tension. It might get uncomfortable, and I have felt pain already in last year, and it was really bad because I was crocheting for hours, and since it has no stretch, it forced my wrists and my thumb. My tendinitis got super bad, but I won't blame cotton yarn 100%. I was crocheting for hours. I didn't give myself a rest. I didn't stretch. I didn't do anything. I was so focused on crocheting that I forgot the whole world around me, which is something that happens to all of us. But if you're crocheting, especially, I mean, it can happen with any kind of fiber, but especially if you're working with cotton, the probability of feeling this kind of pain and discomfort increases a little bit more. So it's good to keep in mind that giving ourselves a rest from time to time when we are crocheting is like mandatory, regardless of the yarn that you're using. The second yarn we are talking about is acrylic. And I only have this ball of acrylic yarn here because I don't like working with acrylic. There is another video here in the channel that I talk about it a bit deeper, but this yarn came in an amigurumi kit that I bought in AliExpress. And I'll leave the link for those videos here in the description and here as well, so you can watch it later. But I don't like working with acrylic. I don't even have an example of an amigurumi here to show you because the only amigurumi that I crocheted with acrylic yarn was like years ago, and I don't even have it here. I think it was in Brazil. Yeah, I think this amigurumi is in Brazil, or I gave it to someone already. I didn't like the experience, and every time I tried to work with something with acrylic, not only amigurumi, but other crochet projects, I didn't like. And I know there are so many different acrylic brands and acrylic yarns out there. The same thing that I already mentioned for cotton. We do have lots of acrylic brands and different acrylic yarns in the market as well. But still, I didn't like it. And that's why I don't have an amigurumi to give you the example. But I can tell you the reasons why I don't like it that much and what's the result that you get out of this. Because, well, there are some advantages as well. So first things first, acrylic is more budget friendly. Acrylic yarn is cheaper, and I have seen some YouTube crocheters advocating to use acrylic, and they're not wrong. Everyone, I mean, there is no, I always say it, there is no crochet police here telling you that this is right and this is wrong. Lots of people might prefer to crochet with acrylic, and if this is something that works for you, go for it 100%. It's totally fine. But I don't like it. That's it. But anyways, acrylic yarn is more budget friendly. They are usually a bit cheaper. Acrylic yarn is very soft. Yeah, I have to agree. It's soft and it feels better in my hands, like to touch it, in comparison with cotton yarn, because cotton is so sturdy, it's so robust that it's not that comfortable. And of course, this translates into our crochet tension, because acrylic can also be more forgiving with your crochet tension if we compare with cotton, for example. Even if you don't have like a very, very tight crochet tension, if you are working in an amigurumi with acrylic yarn, it tends to be a bit cuter in the end than with cotton yarn. I hope it makes sense. Basically, if your stitches are not so perfect yet, acrylic yarn might be a good solution to hide it, which is good. But it's also a bit bad because if you want stitch definition, this is something that you don't have. You don't have the stitches so well defined. And one of the reasons that why I don't like is that one. And also because the amigurumi tends to be a bit fuzzy. And again, maybe this is the result that you want. This is something that you expect from your amigurumi. And if this is what you want, it's totally fine. But I don't like this fuzzy aspect that much in my toys. So that's why if I want them fluffy, I prefer to work with polyester rather than acrylic. And when it comes to the yarn splitting when you crochet, I think this type of fiber is even worse than the cotton one. Because I've tried, of course, I tried to crochet like a magic ring and a couple of rounds with this yarn here, this acrylic one, and a couple of other acrylic yarns that I have. And it happened with all of them. The yarn splits really easily and it gets, it's so frustrating when we are crocheting and it happens. So this is why, these are all the reasons why I don't like working with acrylic that much. And I also don't recommend it to beginners. And the last yarn for us to talk about in this video, of course, is polyester. And if in the beginning of the video I mentioned that the brand makes a difference with cotton or acrylic, for example, well, with polyester, the difference can be huge, huge. There are a couple of videos here in the channel where I talk about different brands that I worked for polyester fiber. And guys, now it makes a whole difference. I have seen some people saying that they hate working with polyester fiber, they don't crochet plushy amigurumi, and I usually tell them it's because you have never used the right polyester fiber, the right brand. And I'm not saying like that there is one good brand and the other ones are super bad, but there are brands that are good to work with and there are other brands that, well, can give you a nightmare. But let's focus first on the fiber itself. Polyester is also super, super soft. There are some advantages and disadvantages in this yarn as well as all the others that I mentioned before. Well, it's soft, it's fluffy, it's perfect to crochet plushy amigurumi. Also, if you want your amigurumi a bit bigger, because this type of fiber tends to be a bit thicker, so if you want bigger toys, they are a very good option. They are also very forgiving when it comes to crochet tension because you cannot see the stitches so well. They are not so well defined. So if your crochet tension is not perfect, if you are still a beginner, of course, like not a beginner your first or second project, but you're still a beginner, there is just a couple of weeks or months that you crochet, maybe this one can be a good choice for you because it hides a little bit more if one stitch is bigger and the other is smaller, or if there are a few holes, gaps between stitches. This kind of yarn tends to be very forgiving with it. While cotton, since you can see the stitches so well, it tends to be more obvious that your stitches are not so perfect yet. But as I said, the fact that you cannot see the stitches can be an advantage and a disadvantage too. Because when you are in your first, second, third project, you're still learning how to differentiate the stitches. It's good to see what you're doing. And I heard from so many people in this past 10 years crocheting amigurumi, people who started with this kind of fiber and they were traumatized because they couldn't understand what was going on and they got easily lost. And it happened to myself. I think it was like my third amigurumi. A long time ago, there weren't that many brands available in the market for polyester fiber, but I tried to crochet with one of those yarns and it scared me because I couldn't see what was going on. I couldn't understand. One arm was bigger than the other because I couldn't count the stitches and I got lost all the time. So I spent years without crocheting with this kind of fiber because I thought it wouldn't work. Until I learned how to crochet better, I got more experienced, some years passed, and I gathered the courage to crochet with this type of fiber again. And then I started trying different brands, and then I learned that there was a difference. So every time someone tells me that they don't like working with polyester for that kind of reason, like I cannot see the stitches, my tension, these kind of things, I usually say that you just have to try a little bit more, not only crochet in general, but try different brands. It really, really helps. Well, I have an example here to show you. I finished crocheting this amigurumi yesterday. Look how cute it is. It's a shamrock. I haven't fastened off yet. That's why you can see it like this. And I still haven't finished the facial embroidery that I want to do. It's so typical of my amigurumi that I'm still going to finish it. But this is a shamrock pillow that I crocheted for St. Patrick's Day. It's going to be available soon in my store. So hopefully when you're watching this video, it is already available. And if it is, I'll leave the link in the description. But if I told myself that I would crochet an amigurumi like this, which is basically a crochet pillow, like if I told myself that a couple of years ago, I wouldn't believe. This yarn that I used for this amigurumi is Alizé Veluto. It's a very, very good brand. Well, it's in my closet. But anyways, it's a very good brand. The yarn does not split that easily. And again, I'm not being sponsored or anything. It's just my personal opinion. And you can see that although it's a polyester fiber, the stitches are pretty well defined. It's not that hard to differentiate the stitches here. Of course, increases and decreases are a bit harder with polyester, but if it's not your first or second project, but you're still a beginner, then I think you can still crochet an amigurumi like this. But I think that if I put both amigurumi like this, you can see how different the stitch definition is with both of them. This is cotton and this is polyester. Completely different toys. Of course, I could crochet my doll with polyester and I could crochet the shamrock with cotton yarn, but the result would be completely different. Maybe if I crochet the shamrock with my fingering cotton yarn, it would be almost a keychain, and it's totally fine. It's just a different amigurumi. And if I crochet a doll with this kind of yarn, it will be huge and it will be cute also, but it's a different kind of toy with a different purpose. And again, there is no right or wrong when it comes to choosing cotton, acrylic, or polyester. It's basically your preference and what works for the project that you have in mind. Is it a project to be, I don't know, standing on a shelf, or is it a pillow that you want to put in your couch? Is it something that will be a keychain, or is it an amigurumi that you'll gift a kid? Well, I'll keep my shamrock here while I finish talking to you in this video. Something very important to keep in mind, regardless of the yarn that you choose, cotton, acrylic, or polyester. If you're a beginner, I do believe cotton yarn is the best choice, but keep in mind that super fine, like fingering yarn, might be difficult for you because of the precision that it requires, and you still don't have that kind of manual skill. But also super bulky yarns, those who are super thick, they might not be that easy as well because they require oversized hooks and it can be difficult for you to manage. So avoid a super thin thread and super bulky threads because they will not be so easy for you to manage. And of course, the best yarn is the one that works for you, that you feel comfortable working with. There are differences in working with all the different types of yarns, not only the ones that I mentioned here in this video, but don't be afraid to try and experiment because, well, it is a matter of preference. Some people prefer to work with one type of yarn, and maybe you have a different experience than I had. Again, there is nothing wrong, okay? It's just a matter of preference. But I would love to hear from you. Which type of yarn is your favorite one to crochet amigurumi? Just write in the comments cotton, acrylic, or polyester because I am really curious to know, and maybe I can create more videos showcasing the different brands that I worked and giving you my honest opinion about all of them. But now I'll leave you this video here because I am pretty sure you're going to like it too.